Hello and welcome everyone to this video on the museum at Presidency University, certainly one of its most cherished possessions, adding a rich dimension to its already splendidly rich dimensions. The museum was part of a two-part plan taken during the 200-year centenary celebrations, which proposed to launch a digital archive and to create a museum based on institutional history. The decision was taken at the highest administrative levels and very effectively followed through. The curator of this museum is Professor Shapun Chakrabarty, one of the most prodigiously learned of scholars that I've ever had the good fortune, the privilege of encountering, whose embeddedness in presidency traditions is almost beyond compare. I thank him for his generous giving of both time and expertise to this project on the museum at Presidency University. I'd like to introduce Professor Shapun Chakrabarty, Kobi Guru Rabindranath Distinguished Professor of the Humanities, and he was the curator of this museum. So we would like to hear from Professor Chakrabarty about some of the stories, the interesting stories that underlie the launching of this museum, and also if he would tell us a few words about Sharan Lal, who was the architect, and how Sharan Lal maximized the space that was available to make a museum with, wall museum, and how he aestheticized it.
Thank you. These were rooms that were used for other purposes when we were students in the 1970s. And during the bicentenary year, we had the opportunity to do something that would be enduring, not just something that, will just be for that particular year. So we thought of having a digital archive of institutional history, which is now online. And in 2018, at the end of the year-long celebrations, we had this museum ready, which was inaugurated by the Chancellor, His Excellency, the Governor of West Bengal, Shri Keshinath Tripathi. And unlike museums in many parts of the world and many parts of our country, and even Calcutta University, which has the Ashutosh Museum of Art, it's not dedicated to either science or art or any other thing. It's simply a museum of institutional history. And we got support in the form of, the Vice Chancellor's enthusiasm for doing this. And as you mentioned, Sharan Lal, who is an excellent designer. Interiors were done by him. Everything was designed by him. The display, everything was done by him, executed by him. And only, the open brickwork that you can see on the walls and the Louvre hiding the air conditioners over there. These were some of the ideas that came from Aurobindo Chaudhary of Aurobindo Design Studio. And of course, the Vice Chancellor had some of the ideas before the architects.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So we enjoyed doing this. And also the other purpose was to preserve whatever was there from old Hindu and presidency. Otherwise, these things get lost in our country. So we wanted to preserve them. And we are very happy that we have been able to bring them to one place which looks well, I shouldn't say this, but it looks rather nice.
It looks rather nice. It's extremely beautiful.
Since it is a teaching museum, the major objective of the small display of a precise collection of antiquities ranging from prehistoric to historical phases is to demonstrate the academic activity related to archaeological exploration and excavation program of the university, that is Presidency University. The Department of History has a curriculum related to field-oriented program, and this assembly is actually the part of this field program. And here we have tried to give some impression about the prehistoric tools, the characteristics of prehistoric tools. So this is hand axe collected from Chotanagpur Plateau. And similarly, we explored some area of Bihar. Chirand is a most important Neolithic site. So this antler is collected from Chirand in North Bihar. We have also a small collection of pottery types of Harappan culture. Perforated ware, the two specimens of perforated ware are on display. It suggests the pattern of ceramic tradition of Harappa, particularly for the students who are very much used to learn the pottery types of Harappan period. Similarly, we have terracotta objects collected from Chandrakirtigord, not much far away from Kolkata. 7 copper coins of Islamic period are on display. This coin is collected from one of my friends, the coin collector Soumitra Sarkar, and I hope in future we may extend such type of collection in this museum, and my best wishes for this teaching museum for various reasons, particularly to extend the visual aspect of teaching learning process in this university.
Behind me you see this foundation stone. I mean, this building. Hindu College was established in 1817, but the building came up in 1873. First it was a one-storied building, and then of course it went up. The architect was William White, and Lord Northbrook laid the foundation stone in 1873. Now it has become a landmark of the city, but very few people really know who the architect was. In fact, this stone is no longer visible in the building itself. We were able to recover an image from a photograph, which we have blown up here. And what you see, the instruments are what these were in the dome of the building when it came up, because there was an observatory there.
Presidency Physics Department came to prominence after Jagadish Chandra Bose joined as faculty member in 1885 and carried out world-class experimental research for the first time in India. The students of this department in different era acquired universal fame. Prashanto Chandra Mahalanobish, Shishir Kumar Mitro, Devendra Mohan Bosu, Amol Kumar Rai Chaudhuri, Chanchal Majumdar, Ashok Sen, a few names of the endless list. The teachers of physics in different times like Snehomoy Datto, Rajendralal Sengupta, Amol Kumar Rai Chaudhuri, Samarendranath Ghoshal, Shamol Sengupta, Vijay Shankar Bashak, and many others were renowned researchers also. They bestowed on students both inspiring teaching and motivation for research. The same is being reflected from these artifacts. Laboratory instruments, an indispensable component of physics practical classes. Almost all contemporary topics used to be included, their fundamentals used to be addressed in physics practical classes. These are for acoustics practical. Vibration of air or water column, physics of musical instruments, plucked string, use of resonator, megaphone, amplification of sound wave just by multiple reflection prior to the advent of electronic amplifier. An observatory was constructed at the rooftop under the auspices of Tripura estate. The observatory is no longer functional, but the telescope, actually several telescopes of adjustable focal length are still existing. These are different types of vacuum and gas-filled tubes, part of modern physics and spectroscopy experiments. This is a live model of steam engine. The working of steam engine reveals some basic law of thermodynamics, and this model acted just like an actual one. Water was heated with spirit lamp to produce steam that could rotate the wheel. Different types of vacuum and gas-filled tubes, part of modern physics and spectroscopy. This includes cathode ray tube and also some demonstration model for liquid pressure, etc. Wooden barrel used for the purpose of storing viscous liquids like castor oil, used in the practical of measuring the viscosity of liquid. To make the teaching method more interactive, more useful, teachers used this type of projectors, such epidiascope. These were predecessors of today's PowerPoint presentation. Both transparent slides and opaque objects like printed page, photographs could be projected on the screen.
Behind me, you will find some portraits. Now, these portraits are portraits of freedom fighters. In spite of all the surveillance and in spite of Presidency being a government institution, people like Ullashkar Dotto, Subhash Chandra Bose, Sharat Chandra Bose, Chittaranjan Das, Prafulla Chandra Ghosh, Santosh Kumar Mitra, they all studied in this institution, and Presidency and with it Eden Hindu Hostel became important centers of what might be called seditious deliberations and sometimes activities. Now, if you look at some of these letters, the red one behind me was a poster that was seized from the walls of what is now Hare School. This was the poster of the Hindustan Socialistic Republican Army. Now, it was to this outfit that the martyr Bhagat Singh belonged. This is signed by Kartar Singh of that outfit, and this is a call to avenge the killing of prisoners in Hijli jail near Kharagpur. And these letters from the principal Bhupati Mohan Sen and the DPI, they are trying to say, okay, this is not a listed outfit, it is not a banned outfit, so you need not take any action. One wonders whether this indeed is an effort on the part of sympathetic and nationalistically inclined teachers to shield their students.
The Department of Geography of the erstwhile Presidency College and now Presidency University has many prized collections of maps. One of our most treasured products or the artifacts is this map, which is the first published map of Mount Everest in 1930 by the Survey of India. It records the height of Mount Everest over here as 29,002 feet. Now there is a story behind the publication of this map and other maps of the country. The British wanted large-scale accurate maps to administer their territories within the country. For this, the Great Trigonometrical Survey was undertaken to record the various measurements and prepare these various cartographic products. This survey was started by Colonel William Lambton in 1802, and later it was taken up on his death by Sir George Everest. Now, Everest redesigned the survey of the country using a system of triangular chains and gridirons. The products of this survey required large computations, and he wanted very skilled mathematicians who could do these calculations. Fortunately, he met with Dr. Robert Tytler, who was then Professor of Science at Hindu College, and Dr. Tytler recommended the name of his most prized pupil, Radhanath Sikdar, for this job. Radhanath Sikdar was an eminent Derosian who had been brought up on the principles of discovery and free thinking. He was also the only Derosian in his batch who pursued the advanced principles of science and was one of the first Bengali youth to study Newton's advanced mathematics. He was a pioneer in the kind of formulae that he devised for survey calculations, and Everest readily employed him on the Great Trigonometrical Survey as a sub-assistant. Later, Radhanath rose to become Everest's chief calculator and computer during the survey. On Everest's retirement, he worked under Andrew Waugh. In 1852, while measuring the height of a mountaintop, just denoted as peak 25, Radhanath found out that the height of the mountain came to 29,002 feet. He is said to have excitedly proclaimed that he had discovered the highest mountaintop on earth. Andrew Waugh confirmed these calculations and in 1856 reported these findings, proclaiming it to be the highest mountain on earth, proposing that its name should be Mount Everest in memory of his great mentor. In this way, he overlooked other local names of the mountain like Sagarmatha and Chomolangma, which were already locally used. Radhanath Sikdar continued to work at the survey and he retired, later taking up teaching of mathematics in Scottish Church College. With another Derosian, Peri Chand Mitra, he founded a Bengali magazine, a Mashik Potrika, which was targeted towards education and upliftment of Bengali women. In this, he also took on the legacy of Derozio in carrying forward the social work and the upliftment of the masses of this region. Radhanath continued to live his retired life at Chandannagar, where there is a museum in his name and where a half bust of his has been recently unveiled.
Shapunda, in this corner of the wall exhibits, one notices several references to the Presidency College magazine. I mean, that is the Presidency College magazine provides a lot of archival material here. It must have been a very powerful tool for the restructuring of this museum.
Of course. Now, let me explain this. After the wall panels, which starts from the entrance to the Arts Library and goes round the stairs, we dedicated a part of this room to the various departments. If you look behind you, you will find history and political science represented here. So Henry Derozio, who was appointed around 1826, there is some controversy about the date, but that is irrelevant. He was appointed to teach English and history, and Kuruvillah Zachariah, one of the greatest teachers of history, who incidentally also taught geography and was instrumental in bringing geography to this institution as a major subject, and Professor Sushobhan Sarkar. Now, below these portraits, you find an essay by Buddhinath Sarkar, who was a great historian, but he actually taught English at Presidency. And there is E.F. Oten, you know the Oten Netaji Subhas Bose affair is well known. Now, the Presidency College magazine brought together not just reminiscences. I have, if you look at the dates, 1955, that was the centenary of Hindu College turning into Presidency College in 1855. So this was a number specifically devoted to reminiscences. So you have Buddhinath Sarkar writing on Henry Louis James and Oten writing on his own experiences, referring to Manmohan Ghosh, Jahangir, Koyaji, then Ramothanath Banerjee, Sir P.C. Roy, and so on. So the Presidency College magazine, of course, and if you look at the political science and sociology thing, there are extracts from the writings and speeches of Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, which were printed in the April 1959 number of Presidency College magazine. There was a second source of information and, not just information, but also significant observations, comments, and that is what the annual report of Presidency. It used to be printed in Bangla, in Bengali. It was called Prashungiki. So these were the major sources, apart from, of course, the archival sources that you find in the state archives, in the college resources and the rare documents section, and of course in the education department. Two project fellows were engaged, and they were trained at the Indian Museum, Calcutta, and Farid Sabah and Mosami Ball. They helped us a lot in collecting these documents. Of course, they had to be curated for the museum.
Yes, of course. And I just noticed one thing here while going through the essay by Sir Buddhinath Sarkar. He spoke of how Henry Louis James believed it was possible to create an Oxford on the bank of the Ganga, and that creating a powerful institution depended on state patronage and also on private donations.
Citizens' initiative is their source, is at the root of Hindu College. It was not a government institution, as it was if you look at the origin of Calcutta Medical College, Jadavpur University, which was the National Council of Education, these were the Calcutta Public Library, these Bongir Sahitya Parishad, these were all set up by the Citizens' Initiative, and the government will come in, of course, because by 1858 we were part of the empire. So the question of government patronage comes in. But this presidency being compared to Oxford, of course, is part of the nostalgia that people who were in the imperial education service were, well, they love that nostalgia.
Geology teaching at Presidency College was started in the year 1892. This is the oldest geology department in Asia. Sir Thomas Holland of the Geological Survey established this department, and initially the department was serviced by the part-time teachers from the Geological Survey. Professor Hemchandra Dasgupta was appointed as the first professor, full-time professor of the Presidency College, who led this department for the next 3 decades. He was a legendary organizer and researcher and a great teacher, and produced a large number of trained geologists who served the exploration and mining industry of the country during the British period, and subsequently they became more important with the inception of the 5-year plans of our country after the independence. Particularly, the students of this department played a pivotal role in the exploration and supply of raw materials to support the 5-year plan activities in the industrialization and infrastructure development that the country witnessed during the first couple of 5-year plans. The students of this department gave leadership in Geological Survey, in Oil and Natural Gas Commission, and all other national agencies that were responsible for the exploration and exploitation of natural resources of our country. The department remained in the front line of national and international research for over a century now, and produced a number of great scientists who served in different parts of the world as academicians and professionals. The faculty members and students of the departments produced large number of peer-reviewed publications and collected rare specimens of rocks, minerals, and fossils which are stored in the department and which snowballed into a full-fledged Museum of Natural History now housed at the Geology Department, and which is named after Professor Hemchandra Dasgupta as Hemchandra Dasgupta Museum of Geology. Here in this museum, we have a few exhibits that were from the Hemchandra Dasgupta Museum of Geology. Let me show you some of these examples here. This particular specimen is a piece of ancient continental crust which is about 350 crore years. They are popularly known as TTG rocks. The TTG rocks are very rarely preserved in the world, and here the specimen was collected from the Singhbhum district of Jharkhand and preserves the history of 350 crore year for the development of continental crusts. The second specimen here is a piece of ancient soil. The soil is about 300 crore years old, and it developed on this continental crust which is about 3.4 to 3.5 billion years old. The soil is interesting because it records the conditions of atmosphere about 300 crore years ago, and the atmosphere was very different from what we see today. Particularly, the atmosphere, it is believed that the atmosphere was free of oxygen at least 250 crore years from now. But this piece of rock, which is 300 crore years old, records the presence of oxygen on the Earth's atmosphere at around 300 crore years ago. So this is a very significant discovery by the faculty members and the researchers of this department.
This compound coral apparently is much younger, but I am not very sure about its age or collection site. Actually, except practicing paleontologists, people at large are unaware about the way fossils are kept. Actually, each of the individual fossils are, we actually give them unique registration numbers and we keep them in museum. But because of our ignorance, we often lose some good collections and invaluable information about those collections. I'm not very sure, but this probably comes from late Pleistocene deposit of Dwarka, which is only say 12 or 15,000 years old. And if I am correct, then perhaps this is not truly a fossil. I would call it a subfossil because it has not gone through the processes of fossilization that involves burial and diagenesis. Moving away from early Jurassic, these are early Cretaceous, again plant fossils. These are leaves. You can see this is a very large compound leaf. Actually, this kind of plants are no longer found in India. These are cycads, and this comes from Kutch, Gujarat, early Cretaceous, about 140 million years old. During these times, that early Jurassic and early Cretaceous, India was in southern hemisphere. Actually, it was welded with the Gondwana supercontinent. After this period, about 65 or 70 million years ago, India got separated from Gondwana land and started to move towards north, and it crossed equator and reached the present position of India in the northern hemisphere, in the tropical part of the northern hemisphere, around say 20 million years ago. So the condition of India and position was entirely different when the Jurassic or these Cretaceous rocks were getting deposited.
Shopunda, this is a very powerful section of the museum, great teachers on the wall panels. Would you have a few words on the concept of greatness as it specifically pertains to presidency? Of course, very long tradition.
The long tradition is especially, if you look at the pictures here, the portraits are those of teachers of English. And you have the portraits of Kuruvillah Chandra Ghosh and Taraknath Sen. They were followed by equally great teachers such as Amol Bhattacharjee, Shailendra Kumar Sen, or Arun Kumar Dasgupta, and most recently Shukanta Chaudhary. But at the end, of course, the first teacher who was a woman in the department, that is Kajal Sengupta, as far as I am able to tell. But what is important was that English was taught at Hindu College for since its inception. Henry Derozio actually taught English, then D.L. Richardson, and Percival, they all taught English. You see here a poem by Manmohan Ghosh, who was the brother of Aurobindo Ghosh, who was a fairly well-known poet in England during that time. This was written in 1916 for the Presidency College magazine, on the centenary, it says, of Presidency College. So those who actually dispute that presidency is not the same thing as Hindu College should read this poem, because in 1916 means it's the centenary of Hindu and presidency. So there is a continuity which you find in 1916. This is not something that we have made up. And the tradition of Gator, there's a kind of succession that you find among these great teachers. But at the same time, because of government control, there was these jobs were transferable jobs, so that around them you find a penumbra of teachers who were good teachers, but sometimes because of they were transferred out of the college. The college did not always get their services, and sometimes got the services of people who did not measure up to the great. So we cannot think of a singular tradition, but if you ask me about the singular tradition, one can say that the fact that there was something which aligned the literature departments to the classical tradition and to what we call the Romance languages, the new languages in European universities here. And this was slightly different from the British habit and curriculum in British universities. It's more like, German universities, the Humboldtian universities, and the research universities in Germany. Because if you look at the second line, at the top, Janardan Chakrabarty, Haraprasad Shastri, they were part of the Bangla department, but Haraprasad Shastri was an equally good teacher of Sanskrit. So there was a combined department of Bengali was taught in 1817, but Sanskrit, Pali and Bengali were taught together in one department until Bengali got its own independent department only in 1945. And there was a kind of synergy between the other departments and the literature departments. So Manik Bandyopadhyay here studied mathematics, for example. Jivanananda Das studied English. A lot of writers studied other subjects. Satyajit Ray studied economics of all things. So it is not as if it's just among the literature departments. There were other people who contributed to the literary culture. Rabindranath visited the college, and you will find there Rabindranath's Abhibhashan is an excerpt from Presidency College magazine, the lecture that Rabindranath, the address that Rabindranath delivered at this college. And Rabindra Parishad was set up by people such as the philosopher Surendranath Dasgupta, Pratul Gupta, and
P.C.
others.
Mahalanobis was also involved with it, right?
I'm not very sure about his role in the Rabindra Parishad.
I read
that. But you may be right. But most certainly, Maitri Devi says that Surendranath Dasgupta was one of the more important people. Mahalanobis's involvement with Tagore's life and Brahma Samaj, and these are all well recorded. And if you look at the top, you'll find G.N. Dhar, who was a librarian here, writing about music classes at Presidency, taken by someone who taught music at La Martiniere. And now the Presidency has set up the
Performing Arts Department.
Department of Performing Arts, but we have had people like Ashok Kumar, Chobi Vishwas, Devjani Chaliha, and there are a few names over there. Gyan Prakash Ghosh, Pramothesh Bodua, and these were people who actually studied and enriched the tradition at Presidency. Rabindranath had other important connections with Presidency. A few of his brothers studied here, Satyendranath Tagore and Jyotirindranath Tagore, and also he intervened in a major way by writing the essay called Chhatra Shashan Tantra when Subhas Chandra went into a kind of confrontation with the authorities during the Otan affair. One must remember that Rabindranath was one of the first experimenters in higher education in India to set up a students' council in Shantiniketan, and one could actually compare it with what was going on at Presidency as a government college during the same period, that is the second decade of the 20th century.
স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সে প্রশান্তচন্দ্র মহলানবিশ প্রথম ভারতে নিয়ে আসেন। ওনার সাবজেক্ট ছিল ফিজিক্স। 1915 সালে ওনার যখন ট্রাইপোজ ডিগ্রি হয়ে গেল কেমব্রিজের কিংস কলেজে, তখন উনি ভারতে ফিরবেন এরকম ঠিক করলেন, এবং তখন ওনার হাতে প্রফেসর ম্যাকলে ওনার টিউটার ছিলেন। তিনি বায়োমেট্রিকার কয়েকটা কপি এবং বায়োমেট্রিক টেবিল তখন তৈরি হয়ে গেছে, সেই ওনার হাতে দিয়েছিলেন। এবং তখন প্রশান্তচন্দ্র সেই পড়া শুরু করলেন, এবং ওনার এতই আগ্রহ দাঁড়ালো যে তখন ধরুন এটা 1901 সাল, 1915 নাগাদ, তত সময় যতটা ভলিউম ওনার হাতে পেলেন সবগুলো কিনে নিলেন, এবং উনি পড়তে পড়তে ভারতে ফিরলেন। পড়া প্রায় শেষ হয়ে গেল, এবং ভারতে যখন উনি পৌঁছলেন তখন উনি ঠিক করলেন ফিজিক্স থেকে, পদার্থবিদ্যা থেকে স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সের দিকেই উনি নজর দেওয়া শুরু করলেন। এবং তার মূল উৎসাহতে তখন প্রফেসর বৈজেন্দ্রনাথ শীল এবং ওনার মামা নীলরতন সরকার খুবই উৎসাহ দান করেছিলেন। এবং আরেকজনের নাম না করলেই নয়, যিনি অন্যকে উৎসাহ দিয়েছিলেন তখন, সেটা হলো রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর। এনারা উৎসাহ দিয়ে উনি স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সটা শুরু করলেন, এবং প্রথম ওনার যে কাজ স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সের অ্যাপ্লিকেশন, সেটা কলকাতা বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের বিভিন্ন পরীক্ষার মার্কসের ওপর স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সের কাজ শুরু হয়। সেটা 1917 সাল। উনি তখন প্রেসিডেন্সিতে জয়েন করেছেন, প্রেসিডেন্সিতে উনি প্রফেসর হিসেবে জয়েন করেছেন, এবং এডুকেশন সার্ভিসে অ্যাকচুয়ালি জয়েন করলেন তারপরে পরীক্ষা দিয়ে। সেই সময় এই জার্নালটা কিন্তু একদম প্রথম জার্নাল স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সের, বায়োমেট্রিক স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্স। সেটা আমাদের কাছে এখনো কপি আছে, প্রেসিডেন্সিতে আমাদের ডিপার্টমেন্টে আছে। এবং তারপরে এই যে জার্নাল, এটাও ওনার আনা শুরু হলো, সেটা দেখছেন 1930 সাল থেকে শুরু হয়েছে। তখন আসলে স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্স তো এশিয়ার মধ্যে প্রথম প্রেসিডেন্সিতে, এবং শুরু হলো প্রেসিডেন্সিতে সেটা এমএসসি লেভেলে, পরে সেটা কলকাতা বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে চলে যায়, এবং 1944 সালে প্রথম প্রেসিডেন্সিতে গ্র্যাজুয়েশন লেভেলে, বিএসসি লেভেলে এই স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সটা শুরু হয়। আইএসআই, ইন্ডিয়ান স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্যাল ইনস্টিটিউট যখন তৈরি হয়, সেটা কিন্তু তারপর অনেক সময় চলে গেছে। 1931 সাল উনি স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্যাল ল্যাবরেটরি প্রেসিডেন্সি কলেজে স্থাপন করলেন, এবং তারও অনেক পরে যখন প্রেসিডেন্সিতেও গ্র্যাজুয়েশন শুরু হয়ে গেছে, স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্যাল ইনস্টিটিউটের সমস্ত বই এবং টিচারদের সমস্ত রকমের সাহায্য প্রেসিডেন্সিকে তখন উনি করতেন। তখন উনি একই সঙ্গে প্রফেসর মৌলানবিশ এবং তার সঙ্গে যারা তখন নানা দিকপাল ছিলেন, সকলে মিলে প্রেসিডেন্সির উন্নতি, মূলত স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সের উন্নতি বলে উন্নতিটা চলতে থাকে।
Department of Life Science is the largest department of this university. It is comparatively one of the youngest and the old department also at the same time. In 1900, Professor Subhas Chandra Bose, who was at that time the professor in the Cardiff University, returned to India and established the Department of Biology in 1901. Then within about 1.5 years or so, that means by 1902 and 1903, the Department of Biology, which started its first time journey in Eastern India, and for that matter India as a whole, was divided into two departments, that is Independent Honors Department of Physiology and Honors Department of Botany, and Professor Bose continued to head both the departments simultaneously at the same time. He, from the very beginning, he innovated, gave a thrust on the research. Although in England he has worked on the migration of the fish and all that, but here to develop the research, he started focusing on development of new instruments to do practical and research. And for that matter, the Department of Botany and Physiology started full-fledged teaching, learning, and teaching and research department from that time. The Department of Life Sciences actively, now what is involved in teaching and research, has a rich legacy of its past in the major three departments for teaching and research. Because in human physiology, one of the major thrust area is that physiology is closely related with anatomy, and two of the major long duration HODs, head of the departments, were from the medical science itself, and the subject like work physiology, ergonomics, anthropometry, and all these were added. It was in Professor Manmohan Ghosh understood this situation and brought the human skeleton in the department and introduced it for its teaching and learning classes. You can see here the human skeleton and what is there. From the very beginning, it was understood that for the proper teaching, a visual medium is extremely necessary. And therefore, when in the lecture theatre, this epidiascope was installed or kept, and here there is the box. So in the box, there was permanently this epidiascope was placed, in which the transparent photographs and also photographs from opaque item, that is from the books, can be directly projected, so that if there are no charts or models present, then the items could be focused directly from the book. So visual impression or use of visual medium was introduced from the very beginning, and they were permanently installed in the lecture theatre. In fact, many departments had epidiascope, but these are one of the from the earliest, which was brought from England to install in the lecture theatre. The major three pillars for the study of physiology was histology, biochemistry, and electrophysiology. Histology formed one of the basic core pillar, which means study of the tissue and study of the structural integrity and of the cells or its pathological condition. Especially Professor Sachidananda Banerjee, who produced 25 PhDs and 200 papers during his tenure, followed by Professor Achinta Kumar Mukherjee, they studied extensively on the structure of tissues and with the vitamins, work on vitamins and diabetes mellitus and endocrinology. So for study of histology, we required that how detailed we could see the structure of the tissue. So these are the different microscope at that level. Not only the study of the tissue or we see it should be done, but we require it documenting. So another essential part to this histology was the camera attachment, so that the photomicrographs of the specialized zones, say for example, the pancreatic beta cells are damaged so that diabetes is produced, that could be documented, or if there is recovery with certain medicines, that could be documented, and these are the cameras, and there were cameras of various sizes. In enumeration studies like say for example, counting of the total number of cells, bacterial cell cultures, many a time bending the neck and seeing it in the microscope was difficult, especially when we magnify more, the area of vision becomes less. So these were some of the instruments. You can see there at the microscope here, which will magnify and the image would be seen in a large scale, and it can be pointed with a pointer, and the colony of the bacteria or the number of cells could be counted in a particular field or particular zone.
For more than 60 years, the Zoology Museum of Presidency has been a center of education, research, and public outreach. There is a basic difference between a zoology museum and other museum, and the difference lies at the point that the things that are kept in a zoology museum none of them are man-made things. That means they are not any artifacts. All the things that have been preserved and displayed in the Museum of Zoology are nature-made things. So when we look at these objects, these specimens, we are actually looking at a natural history of more than 60 years. And when I talk about natural history, we can also learn about the pattern of biological diversity in the region, mainly from the eastern part of India, for the last 60 years or more. These specimens, they are very interesting specimens. Some of them are very rare. Some of them have come from some private collection. Some of them has been acquired by some researchers or scientists. The research and education with all these specimens are being going on for the last 60 years or more. But the pattern of the research has changed a bit. When we talk about research with zoology specimens, the research lies mainly with evolution, biodiversity, taxonomy, and conservation. Now, these research nowadays, these research are all based on molecular researches, the molecular taxonomy, molecular evolution. In previous years, all these research was based on morphological research, but now the pattern of research has changed. I can show you some specimens, these snake specimens. There are these snake specimens, there are some reptilian, other reptiles and lizards. My laboratory and other laboratories of the Department of Life Science of Presidency University are working on these specimens at the molecular level. We are looking at their DNA, and we are very hopeful to find even some new species from these so-called old specimens. So these specimens have helped us, the teachers of this university, to create an awareness among our young students. The awareness about the biological diversity of our country, awareness about the preservation of the biological diversity, and awareness about the conservation of diversity and conservation of wildlife in the country. This particular specimen is a very interesting one. This is a sloth, we all know, but if we look closely at its hands, we can see that there are only 2 fingers at both of its hands. This is known as a two-toed sloth, and the interesting fact about this particular specimen is, first, it is a very rare specimen. Secondly, the evolution of this particular species has occurred in a time frame of 6 to 7 million years ago. These type of sloths are found in the Central and South America, in the region of the Amazon River, and near the valleys of the Andes mountain. This particular species is the only living representative of an entire family of sloths, and there are only 2 specimens of this sloth in the eastern region of India. One is kept at the University of Calcutta Museum, and the second one, this one, is at the Presidency Museum.
I am Abhijit De. I am from the Department of Life Sciences, and I am going to explain you about a few aspects of one of the fascinating collection of our university, which is herbarium. And we have herbarium specimen from the last probably more than 100 years, and there are lots of contributors who have contributed to this legacy, many of which are from India, many of the people who are from outside India, from America, from Europe and other countries. One of the pioneer contributor to this legacy was Professor Raja Rammohun Bose. In front of his letters and communications, I'll be explaining a few aspects of this collection also, his collection. And he was a professor from Bankim College initially, and then he also taught in Carmichael Medical College from 1916, and he contributed almost 4,000 herbarium specimens to our herbarium in the Department of Life Sciences. It was erstwhile the Department of Botany, Presidency College. So you can see those communications which were sent to him and also sent by him to the different parts of the globe in acquiring such a huge collection for this college. Now to move on from here to another part of this collection. So here you can see one piece of such work that was contributed by Dr. W.M. Bridge Cook from North America, and we call it microbiota, since these samples, these herbarium samples, are containing a number of plant samples, especially plant leaves, plant stems, plant roots, etc., which are being infected by different pathogenic organisms, mostly fungi, bacteria, or other plant pathogens. So this is very important, like from these samples we can trace the plant pathogen interaction for more than 50 years or even up to 100 years in the past. So their association have been changed, but these are a kind of living documentation for the past 100 years almost that we are keeping in this museum. Again, if we move to this part of our collection, we may call it as fungarium. It's a new terminology. It's a kind of derivative of that herbarium sample, because here we preserve fungal specimen. There are certain fungi which are woody in nature, so those fungi can be kept as they are. There are certain fungi which are soft in nature, those can be kept in formalin or formaldehyde for longer period of time. Besides those fungi specimen that are exhibited here, we also have lichen. Here you see a piece of branch from a plant that contains a huge amount of certain flora, and this flora is known as lichen. Lichen is important because it is a very fascinating kind of association between algae and fungi. And lichen is also very important because it is a very potent ecological indicator, because it indicates the amount of pollution or pollutant which is present in the atmosphere. Again, to continue what I have already said, here you will find a few specimens that belong to that fungarium and xylarium. I already talked about fungarium, that is a collection of fungal specimen in terms of herbarium, and here you can find out a few wood samples which nowadays which is called xylarium. So the wood samples which are exhibited here, mainly constitute of different samples from Tectona, from Terminalia, and from other plants. So from those wood samples, we can really trace out the morphology or anatomy of the wood samples which are present in different plants or different trees, and also it's a kind of representation of the kind of heritage, the kind of plants we are having in India, or at least this part of our country.
History of the Department of Chemistry remains incomplete without the two mighty personalities whose portraits are displayed in the museum. Sir Alexander Pedler and Sir Prafulla Chandra Roy played a pivotal role in the early tradition of the Department of Chemistry to give a specific shape in the research and teaching learning process. Actually, in the year of 1873, Sir George Campbell, the administrator of Bengal, took an initiative to disseminate the scientific education in the Bengal. And in consequence, Alexander Pedler appointed as professor at Presidency College in 1874. And from the early days, Pedler tried to save the teaching learning process as well as research. Here is one article in the Presidency College magazine published in 1915. Prafulla Chandra Roy mentioned the wisdom and foresight of Alexander Pedler in this article. Pedler arranged different types of equipments and started the practical class. Apart from this, Pedler and Sir J. Eliot consistently pursue to start or to begin the science degree with full recognition. Pedler also the principal of this college 4 times, and actually at that time there was a few personal effort but no continuous research at the Presidency College even and at the Bengal and India. But Pedler started research seriously, and in 1880 he published a paper on cobra poison, and the research went on, and in 1890 the 3 important research publications was made by Pedler. In 1889, Pedler became the Fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry. Coincidentally, in this particular year, Prafulla Chandra Roy joined Presidency College in the category of provincial service with salary rupees 250, but not in the imperial service, as the imperial service is practically reserved for European. From the beginning, just after joining the Presidency College, Prafulla Chandra Roy realized the importance of research. Actually, he thought the research can be a powerful tool in combating the colonial bondage. He started research with the Indian foodstuff. But one point is that at that time, the colonial administrator did not realize the essence of the scientific equipments. And without the very common equipment like fume hood, Prafulla Chandra Roy began research. In the year 1894, Prafulla Chandra published his first research paper in the Asiatic Society of Bengal on the food stuff. Actually, he wanted to make a safety standard of food. By heartiest inspiration and excellent teaching method, P.C. Ray generated a group of students, and among them Priyoda Ranjan Rai, Jitendranath Rokhit deserved special attention. Prafulla Chandra Rai was not directly involved in the Swadeshi movement, but when Ullaskar Datta, Indian freedom fighter revolutionaries, made bomb at the chemistry laboratory, Prafulla Chandra Rai understood that but never reported to the authority. And in 1923, in the Utkal Provincial Conference, Prafulla Chandra Rai told that science can afford to wait, but Swaraj cannot. This is clear his attitude about the Indian freedom fighter. And here are two important chemicals used by Sir P.C. Ray. One is muriate of synconidine and another sulfate of quinidine. Both have medical importance. And in 2012, Royal Society of Chemistry announced to commemorate the life and achievement of Sir Prafulla Chandra Ray as a great Indian chemist, Indian scientist, philanthropist, entrepreneur, and father of Indian chemistry, and awarded a plaque on 31st January 2012.
Hello, I'm Dr. Shubhra Bhattacharya from the Mathematics Department of Presidency University. So I'll be speaking on these three exhibits. These were in our department. And the first one is a mechanical calculator. The mechanical calculator was invented by Blaise Pascal in 1642, but he took 3 more years, and after building 50 prototypes, he launched his machine to the public, and thereby he built 20 of these mechanical calculators over the next period of 10 years. And this calculator could do addition, subtraction, and also multiplication based on repetitive addition and subtraction. However, with the launch of electronic calculator, mechanical calculators were disbanded and it was no longer in use. The second exhibit that I'm going to talk about is the Sexton-Hewson model. So this is a model which measures the angle between two visible objects. It's actually an object to measure the angular distance, and the model used here was to measure the angular distance between an astronomical object and the horizon. This particular model that is over here has been built by Henry Hughes and Son in 1938. The third thing is the imbibition meter. Imbibition is actually a mechanism by which solids or colloids absorb water and increase their volume. So this imbibition meter, this particular one, was in use to measure the imbibition of water in plants and seeds.
Shopunda, this is one of the most charged areas, most resonant areas for me of the museum. We notice certain incredible details of accession here. Kritibas Ojha's Ramayan, printed at the Baptist Mission Press in 1803 and accessed at Fort William College in 1825. After that, it was brought here. I'll just add a few more dates. That is this one, Batris Simhasana, translated by Mritunjoy Vidyalankar. It was published in 1818 by the same Baptist Mission Press, and that was also accessed at Fort William College. And then we have Hindu Otoba Presidency College by Raja Rammohun Bose, and then Shandillo's Aphorisms of Sandilya, translated by E.B. Cowell, and Kashiprasad Ghosh's The Shire, where he seems to be engaging with a certain Orientalist, certain Orientalist emphasis, lore, and a kind of, one could look at it as some kind of patriotic assertion of patriotism. So what would you have to say about this?
there is no thematic unity in all this. It is simply that Presidency received from Fort William College some of their books, some of the part of the collection. Sometimes you will find a stamp saying Anglo-Indian College, that is in the college. And most of these were handed down to the Imperial Library. So you'll still get them in the rare books section of what is now the National Library. Part of these came down to Presidency. So I wouldn't impose any kind of thematic significance, Orientalist or whatever. You find that the earliest that you get there is Microcosmos, which is by Peter Heylen. And this is the 4th edition, and it was printed at Oxford in 1629. That is pretty old, because if you consider that printing with movable type in Bengali started in the 1770s with Ahled's grammar and so on. This is pretty, it's a very rare treasure, and Presidency had these treasures. Apart from Asiatic Society and Kolkata Madrasa, we had some of the richest collections. Later on, of course, Calcutta University received bequests. If you pass on to that and to the ones that you have mentioned, that is Mritunjoy
Vidyalankar,
Batris Simhasana and
Kritibash's Ramayana,
you will find that there is a stamp. The stamp is that of the College of Fort William. You will find 3 languages there: Hindi, Bengali, and I suppose Urdu or Persian, I am not very sure. And you will also find that it was printed in Srirampur. Now, the Srirampur Baptist Mission was set up in 1800, exactly the year that Fort William College was set up in Calcutta. So these were from Fort William College passed on. So what we did was, these were blown up because we wanted to preserve the rare specimens and displayed in this form. At the same time, whereas you find Haraprasad Ghosh's The Shire, and Derozio himself was a poet, you will find the 3rd edition of Newton's Principia Mathematica, and this was printed in London in 1726, whereas the Philosophical Magazine is published from Edinburgh and London. And this goes back to 1857. Mm-hmm. And in 1878, you have E.B. Cowell, who is editing this Aphorisms of Sandilya with the commentary of Sapneswara for the Bibliotheca Indica series of the Asiatic Society. Cowell, of course, taught here, and later he went on to teach Sanskrit at Cambridge University. So this is an eclectic collection of the range of subjects that was covered by our very rich. You will find that throughout the history of this institution, whether we are thinking of Presidency College or Presidency University, or before that, Young Bengal in Hindu College, there has been a kind of ambivalence about this institution. There has been, the best example is the story of E.F. Oten, who was very fond of his pupil Subhas Chandra Bose, but which the affair which actually led to the rustication of Bose, and Derozio, who actually lost his job. And today at Presidency University, you have 2 buildings named after them, so that they have been honored by the institution which had once expelled them, had made them suffer. This ambivalence of what one might call rebellion and conformity, contemplation and action, excess and restraint is a running motif that you find in a great institution.
I would like to introduce my very distinguished colleagues to you who have made this entire experience such a rich and rewarding one for me, and I hope they had fun too, working on this project. Professor Shapun Chakrabarty, thank you Shapunda for this incredible visit to the museum. Professor Debashish Sen of the Department of Life Sciences, Professor Joydeep Mukhopadhyay of the Department of Geology, Professor Borun Rai Chaudhary of the Department of Physics, Professor Priyank Patel of the Department of Geography, Professor Arnob Haldar of the Department of Chemistry, Professor Shojadeep Mukherjee of the Department of Life Sciences. Back again to Professor Bishwajit Rai of the Department of Statistics and Professor Kollan Haldar of the Department of Geology. Thank you all very much. This brings us to the end of this adventure enterprise of creating a video on the museum at Presidency University. Personally speaking, it has been one of the richest adventures, academic adventures that I've ever undertaken. And it's been a privilege to learn about all the great people whose efforts have created this institution, whose interlocking narratives are fairly inexhaustible. There's always scope for new stories, new narratives, and also research potential. A lot of it lies buried still. So, to Presidency University, earlier Presidency College, and Hindu College.